Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world where your childhood ends before it begins. Picture this. You're 7 years old, standing in the cold stone hall of a convent, clutching your mother's hand for comfort. She leans down, kisses your forehead, and walks away, leaving you behind with strangers in robes. No goodbye, no promise of return, just silence and the echo of heavy wooden doors closing behind you. You won't see the outside world again for years, maybe never. This is your new life, chosen not by faith, but by fate. Maybe your family couldn't afford another mouth to feed. Maybe they wanted to secure favor with the church. Or perhaps you were simply born into a noble house that saw nunnery as the only respectable future for a daughter who wouldn't inherit land or titles. Whatever the reason, here you are, a child among grown women, learning prayers you barely understand, kneeling on cold flagstones until your legs ache. There's no escaping this path. You'll be trained from early morning to late night, taught obedience above all else. You'll memorize psalms and Latin hymns, scrub floors, and carry water pails heavier than you are. The older sisters watch your every move, correcting your posture, your tone, your very thoughts. This isn't just discipline, it's erasure. The person you were when you walked through those gates, she's fading fast. And if you try to run, well, you probably won't survive this. Convents were often walled compounds, surrounded by farmland and guarded by loyal brothers or local knights. If you made it past the gate, where would you go? Back to a family that gave you away? Into a world that didn't want girls without dowries or futures. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. We've got listeners all over the world, and I love knowing where you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're still clutching the edge of your cloak, try not to cry. The abbess, a tall woman with eyes like flint, steps forward and places a hand on your shoulder. "Welcome," she says, voice neither cruel nor kind. "You will learn to love this place." But already, you know better. The days begin before dawn. There's no time for play, no room for imagination. You wake to the clang of a bell echoing through the dormitory, and within moments, you're herded out of bed, shivering in the pre-dawn chill. Your feet press against the icy floorboards as you shuffle to chapel, barefoot unless you're lucky enough to have been given shoes. 8 times a day, you will kneel in that cold, candlelit space and chant the divine office. Matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, nun, vespers, compline. You'll learn these names quickly because missing even one service means punishment. At 7, your throat burns with Latin words you don't understand, but comprehension doesn't matter. Repetition does. Devotion does. Submission does. When you're not praying, you're working. Older novices show you how to sweep the halls, polish candlesticks, help in the kitchen. You fetch water from the well, gather herbs from the garden, and mend torn habits. Every task is meant to humble you, to strip away childish whims and replace them with piety. Your meals are simple: bread, broth, sometimes fish on feast days, though never meat. Meat is for men, for warriors and kings. For you, there is only fasting, especially during Lent or Holy Weeks. Hunger becomes familiar, a constant companion that gnaws at your belly while your soul is supposedly nourished by prayer. Sleep comes late and rarely lasts long. After Compline, you retreat to the dormitory, where straw mattresses line the floor and thin blankets offer little warmth. Candles flicker low as whispered prayers fill the air, not from devotion, but fear. Fear of failure, fear of punishment, fear of the dreams that come unbidden. Dreams of home, of laughter, of freedom. Historians still argue whether young girls truly understood the vows they were expected to take. Many entered as oblates, children offered to God by their parents, and weren't allowed to choose otherwise. Some would later recall being asked, as teenagers, if they wished to proceed with full monastic profession. Others had no such choice. Their fate was sealed the day they crossed the threshold. You're one the latter. By the time you reach your 12th year, you're no longer a child. You've learned to keep your head down, your mouth shut, and your hands always busy. You've watched other girls struggle, some crying themselves to sleep, others disappearing overnight, sent away for disobedience or illness. You've seen the way the abbess's eyes follow you during services, measuring your worth. And then, one day it happens. The ceremony. You stand before the altar, dressed in white, trembling as the abbot or bishop asks if you wish to take your final vows. It's a formality. Everyone knows it. You nod, whispering the words you've rehearsed 100 times. Ido. The weight of those 3 syllables settles over you like a burial shroud. You're now a nun. Forever. No escape. No turning back. The weight of your final vows settles over you like a stone coffin lid closing with a final thud. No turning back. No second chances. You're officially bound, body, mind, and soul, to this life behind thick stone walls, where the only freedom is the illusion of piety. The white veil of your novice days is gone, replaced by the heavy black habit that now clings to you like a shroud. Your name, too, may have changed, given up in favor of something holier, something more fitting for a woman who no longer belongs to the world. You kneel one last time before the altar, lips trembling as you whisper the words you've rehearsed so many times. I renounce the world. And just like that, the world has renounced you too. There's no celebration, no feast, no joy. Just another day, another round of prayers, another set of chores that will wear your body down until sleep claims you like a mercy killing. The ceremony ends, but your real life begins now. There are no congratulations, no kind words from the abbess, only a cold nod and the silent expectation that you will fall into rhythm with the rest of the convent's daily grind. And yet, deep inside, something stirs. A flicker of doubt, a memory of sunlight outside those thick stone walls. Maybe it's the way your mother's voice still echoes in your dreams, or the scent of fresh bread from the village bakery carried on the wind. Whatever it is, you dare not speak of it. Not aloud, not even in confession. Because once you take your final vows, there's no going back. Not legally, not spiritually, not physically. The church made sure of that. Canon law was clear. A nun who tried to escape her vocation was committing a mortal sin. If caught, she could be imprisoned, excommunicated, or worse, handed over to secular authorities for punishment. Some were locked away in dungeons beneath monasteries, others forced into solitary confinement for years. A few were rumored to have been buried alive as a warning to others. Historians still argue whether these punishments were common or exaggerated by later writers, but the fear they inspired was very real. Nuns knew that if they voiced a desire to leave, even hypothetically, they might be accused of heresy or possession by demons. After all, wasn't the devil known to tempt holy women? Wasn't he always lurking behind every stray thought? So you keep quiet. You bury your longing beneath layers of routine. You rise before dawn, chant your prayers, sweep the cloister, and mend torn robes without complaint. You learn to nod at the right moments, to bow your head when the abbess speaks, to avoid drawing attention to yourself. But some days, the weight becomes unbearable. Maybe it's the silence that gets to you first, the absence of laughter, of music, of any sound beyond the rustle of habits and the murmur of Latin. Or maybe it's the monotony, the endless repetition of the same tasks, the same words, the same faces. You begin to wonder what happened to the girl who used to dream of running through fields, climbing trees, chasing butterflies. That girl is gone. In her place stands a woman bound by oaths she didn't fully understand when she made them. A woman whose only purpose now is obedience to God, to the church, to the abbess who rules this walled kingdom with an iron will. There are rumors, of course. Whispers pass between novices late at night. Tales of nuns who escaped in disguise, who fled to distant lands and lived under false names. But those stories are dangerous. Dangerous enough that you don't dare ask too many questions about them. Still, sometimes you imagine it. Imagine slipping past the gate under cover of darkness, your heart pounding as you step into the unknown. Imagine feeling grass beneath your bare feet again, hearing birdsong instead of bells. Imagine breathing air that doesn't smell of candle wax and damp stone. But imagining isn't enough. And begging? Begging makes things worse. Some sisters do try. They fall to their knees before the abbess, weeping, pleading for release. They promise to live pious lives elsewhere, to serve God in different ways. But the answer is always the same. No. You took your vows. You belong to God now, even if your soul screams otherwise. There are records, scattered ones, of nuns who managed to escape. Some disguised themselves as pilgrims or servants, vanishing into bustling cities where no one would recognize them. Others found sympathetic priests willing to look the other way, or wealthy patrons who offered sanctuary in exchange for labor. A rare few even remarried, though such unions were considered invalid by the church, and discovery meant disgrace, imprisonment, or worse. But most never made it far. The roads were dangerous, filled with bandits, soldiers, and wandering friars who reported suspicious women to local bishops. Without money, protection, or identity, escapees often ended up starving, captured, or sold into servitude. And if returned to the convent, their punishment was swift and merciless. Solitary confinement, whipping, forced fasting, in extreme cases, permanent exile to a harsher monastery, or even execution under secular law. A few centuries later, in Renaissance Italy, some rebellious nuns went so far as to stage dramatic escapes involving secret tunnels, bribed guards, and hidden lovers waiting beyond the city gates. Some even published memoirs detailing their suffering and defiance. But for most medieval nuns, such fantasies remained just that, dreams whispered behind closed doors, quickly smothered by guilt and fear. Even if you did manage to flee, where would you go? Back to the family that gave you away? To a world that saw unmarried women as liabilities? Without a dowry, without land, without legal rights, you'd be prey for opportunists and predators alike. Marriage was unlikely. Work options were slim. Charity was scarce. No, the convent may be a prison, but at least it feeds you, clothes you, and offers a twisted kind of safety. You may never see the sky unframed by high stone walls, but at least you won't starve. At least you won't be beaten by a husband or sold into servitude. At least you won't die alone. So you stay. You learn to endure. You learn to hide the ache in your chest whenever someone mentions the word freedom. You learn to smile when asked how you enjoy your holy calling. And above all, you learn to forget the person you once were. The cold seeps into your bones before you've even sat down. Breakfast, what little there is of it, is served in the refectory, a long, dimly lit hall lined with wooden benches and tables worn smooth by years of use. The air smells faintly of damp stone, candle wax, and something else, something stale like old bread left too long in the rain. You take your place among the others, head bowed, hands folded tightly in your lap as the appointed reader begins chanting from the pulpit at the far end of the room. No one speaks, not a word. Silence is law during meals. Talking is forbidden unless absolutely necessary, and even then, permission must be granted by the abbess or her deputy. Conversations are limited to gestures, a series of hand signals that have been drilled into you since childhood. A finger raised means you need more water. 2 fingers mean you'd like another piece of bread. 3 means you're done, or sometimes that you're hurting inside and no one will hear you say it out loud. You eat slowly, not because the food is good, but because it isn't. There's never enough of it. Most days, you're given coarse black bread made from rye or barley, so dense it feels like chewing on damp wood. If you're lucky, there's a thin broth ladled from a pot hanging over the kitchen fire. A soup so watery it barely qualifies as sustenance. On feast days, you might get fish boiled until all flavor has vanished, or a few spoonfuls of root vegetables stewed in vinegar to mask their bitterness. Meat is for men, for knights, for kings, for the lords who dine on roasted boar and spiced wine, while you nibble on crusts soaked in lukewarm broth. Even eggs are rare, reserved for the sick or the elderly. Dairy is scarce, cheese often sour, butter rationed like gold. Historians still argue whether this diet was meant to humble the nuns or simply reflected the economic reality of the time. Some monasteries were wealthy, funded by noble patrons and land grants, but many struggled to feed their inhabitants. In lean years, when harvests failed or livestock died, even the church suffered. Nuns were expected to endure hunger as a test of faith, a way to purify the soul through deprivation. But hunger does strange things to the mind. Some sisters grow gaunt, their cheeks hollow, eyes sunken beneath heavy lids. Others become sharp-tongued, quick to anger, their tempers frayed by empty stomachs. A few develop odd cravings, licking salt off the table, chewing on twigs, hoarding scraps in hidden corners of their cells. Theft is punished harshly, but desperation makes thieves of saints. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen? No. Well, forget it. This is worse. At least ancient Egyptians had some sense of luxury. You have a bowl of gruel so thin it could double as dishwater and a hunk of bread that threatens to crack your teeth if you bite too hard. Still, you chew. Slowly. Carefully. Because wasting food is a sin. And sinning here comes with consequences. After eating, you wait quietly for the signal to rise. The refectory empties in perfect order, each nun exiting behind the other in single file, heads lowered, eyes fixed on the floor. No one rushes. No one lingers. Even your footsteps are measured, designed to maintain the illusion of peace. Outside, the world bustles. Farmers tend their fields. Merchants barter in town squares. Children chase one another through muddy streets. But here, behind the convent walls, life moves at a crawl, dictated by bells and prayers and the ever-watchful eye of the abbess. And yet, somehow, the silence is louder than any noise. It presses against your ears, fills the space where laughter should be. It swallows every thought before it can escape your lips. It turns mealtime into ritual, not nourishment. A sacred act performed in absolute quiet, broken only by the occasional scrape of a spoon against a bowl or the soft drip of wax from a candle overhead. You miss sound. Not just any sound. Laughter, music, the clatter of dishes, the hum of conversation. You miss the way your mother used to sing as she worked. How birds chirped outside your window before you were taken away. Here, the only melodies are chants, rising and falling like waves against the stone walls, never changing, never stopping. There's a certain kind of madness that grows in silence. Some sisters whisper to themselves when they think no one is listening. Others talk to the animals, stroking the cows in the dairy barn, murmuring to the chickens in the coop. A few go so far as to carve messages into the wooden pews during chapel services, desperate to leave some mark of their existence. But you've learned to survive by saying nothing, by watching, by waiting, by pretending that the ache in your belly isn't hunger, but holiness. There's a rhythm to everything here, and meals are no exception. Before each sitting, a nun reads aloud from scripture or edifying texts, ensuring that even in the act of eating, your mind remains focused on God. Sometimes it's comforting, words of wisdom or gentle psalms. Other times, it's warnings of damnation, tales of sinners burned in hellfire while holy women wept and prayed. One day, the reading is about Saint Agnes, a girl martyred for refusing to marry a pagan suitor. You listen carefully, noting how the story is told like a triumph, though the details are gruesome. She was stabbed in the throat when she refused to renounce Christ. They say her blood turned to milk, a sign of purity. The sisters nod solemnly as the reader finishes. You try to feel inspired. Instead, you wonder what would happen if you refused to eat. Will they call it rebellion? Or will they call it fasting? Either way, punishment would follow. Refusing food is seen as defiance, a rejection of God's providence. Starving yourself without permission is considered a grave sin, punishable by lashes or solitary confinement. Some nuns have been locked in tiny cells for weeks, fed only bread and water, until they beg forgiveness through cracked lips. And yet, self-starvation is common. Some do it out of genuine devotion, believing that suffering brings them closer to heaven. Others do it quietly, hoping to slip away unnoticed, to die before their spirit breaks completely. You don't dare risk it. Instead, you swallow your portion like everyone else, even when your stomach rebels. You drink your water, even when it tastes like iron. You fold your hands again, bow your head, and wait for the bell that signals the next round of prayers. Outside, the sky is turning gray. Rain taps softly against the stained glass windows, casting shifting patterns across the stone floor. You stare at the reflections, watching colors dance like ghosts of forgotten things. Colors you'll never wear, places you'll never see, people you'll never meet. Back in the dormitory, the younger novices whisper about dreams, of feasts, of forests, of freedom. They don't know better yet. They haven't learned that longing is dangerous, that wanting anything beyond these walls is a slow form of death. You did once. Dreamed of running through fields, of chasing butterflies, of hearing your name spoken with love instead of duty. But those dreams faded, replaced by the weight of habit and vow. Now, when you dream, it's of silence, of cold stone floors, of empty plates, of voices that never speak. The bell rings again. It always rings. You've lost count of how many times you've heard that sound in your life. How many mornings it's yanked you from restless sleep. How many nights it's chased you into the cold embrace of chapel stone. But tonight, like every night before it, you shuffle into place with the others, shoulders hunched against the damp chill seeping through the walls. It's Compline, the final service of the day, and your body aches from kneeling too long, standing too still, praying until your throat feels raw. 8 services, every single day, matins at midnight, lauds before dawn, prime, terce, sext, NUN, vespers, and finally Compline. Each one a marathon of Latin chants, psalms recited by rote, voices rising and falling like waves crashing against an unyielding shore. You know every word by heart, even if you don't understand them, even if they mean nothing to you anymore. And yet you chant, you kneel, you bow, because there is no other option. Your knees are callous from years of this, years spent pressing them into flagstone floors so cold they seem to suck the warmth straight from your bones. Your back aches constantly, stiff from hours of standing perfectly still, spine straight as a candle held before the altar. Your lips move without thought, repeating phrases you've whispered 1,000 times before. Kyrie eleison, Gloria Patri, Amen. Historians still argue whether these endless prayers were meant to elevate the soul or simply wear down the body. Some say the monastic schedule was designed to keep nuns too exhausted for rebellion, too drained for disobedience. Others claim it was spiritual discipline, a way to mold the mind into perfect submission. Whatever the reason, the result is the same: exhaustion. Deep, bone-weary fatigue that clings to you like the scent of candle smoke. By now, you've learned how to survive it. You've figured out how to sway slightly when you stand, shifting your weight to ease the pressure on your legs. You've memorized which pews creak the loudest, so you can avoid stepping on them during silent processions. You've even discovered the best moments to sneak a breath of fresher air near the side door, just before the abbess notices. But no amount of tricks can stop the toll it takes. Some sisters collapse during services, overcome by hunger or dizziness. Others fall asleep on their feet, swaying dangerously until someone nudges them awake. A few suffer nosebleeds from standing too long, their bodies rebelling against the strain. When this happens, they're not comforted, they're punished, forced to kneel longer than the rest, heads bowed in shame while the others chant above them. And still, the prayers go on. There's no escape from them, not even in dreams. The rhythm of the divine office has become part of you, stitched into your very being like the threads of your habit. You hear it in your sleep, soft murmurs of amen, whispers of pax vobiscum. Sometimes, you wake up mid-nightmare only to realize you've been whispering prayers in your sleep. One nun, Sister Margaret, the quiet one who always sits near the back, once told you she could hear the bells even when they weren't ringing. She swore she could feel the vibrations in her chest, like the echo of some distant thunder. No one believed her. They said she was mad or possessed. She disappeared shortly after, sent away to another convent where they deal with troubled souls. You wonder sometimes if you'll end up like her. Sometimes you wish you would. At least madness might be a kind of freedom. At least it might let you forget. But for now, you stay. You endure, you chant, and you wait. Wait for the final amen that signals the end of Compline. Wait for the slow procession back to the dormitory, where straw mattresses await but offer little comfort. Wait for the candles to flicker low, for the silence to settle over the room like a heavy blanket. You lie still, listening to the breathing of the others around you. Some snore softly, others murmur in their sleep. One girl, just a child, really, is crying quietly in her sleeve, trying not to make a sound. You want to reach out, to comfort her, to tell her that yes, it hurts now, but someday she'll get used to the pain. But you don't. Instead, you close your eyes and whisper a prayer of your own. Not to God, to sleep. Let it come quickly. Let it last long. Let it take you somewhere far away from here. The next morning comes too soon. Matins again. Midnight prayers that drag you from sleep, like chains pulling you from a shallow grave. You stumble through the corridors, barefoot, shivering in the dark. The chapel is colder than ever, its stone walls swallowing what little heat your body tries to hold on to. Candles flicker in their sconces, casting long shadows that dance across the floor like ghosts. You kneel. You chant. You try not to think about how your stomach growls, how your head pounds, how your limbs tremble from fatigue. Outside, the world sleeps peacefully. Farmers dream of harvests. Merchants plan tomorrow's bargains. Mothers cradle their children in warm beds. But here, behind thick stone walls, there is no peace, only duty. Duty to God. Duty to the church. Duty to the vow you never truly chose. You envy the birds outside, the way they soar freely through the sky, untethered by rules and rituals. You envy the dogs that bark in the village, chasing scraps through muddy streets. At least they live without fear of punishment for thinking the wrong thought. Here, even thoughts are monitored. You've seen what happens to those who break the silence between services. A nun caught whispering in the cloister earns herself 3 days of bread and water. A novice who fidgets too much during Mass must kneel for an extra hour after Vespers. And if someone dares to question the schedule, to suggest that perhaps 8 services a day is excessive, they disappear, sent to another convent, or worse, locked away in a monastery's secret wing, where no one speaks of what goes on behind those doors. You've heard rumors, of course, stories passed in hushed tones beneath woolen blankets, about women who screamed through the night, about punishments so severe they made grown sisters weep in fear. Whether they're true or not, you don't know. But you do know this: questioning the system is dangerous. So you obey, you pray, you suffer, and you wait. For something, anything. But time moves slowly inside these walls. Years blur together like ink spilled on parchment, each day bleeding into the next. There is no future here, only repetition. No hope, only endurance. Still, you press your forehead to the cold stone floor and whisper your prayers, even if you no longer believe in them, even if your voice cracks with exhaustion, even if your soul screams for release. The smell hits you first, not the incense or candle wax you've grown used to in chapel, but something else, something sour and sharp, clinging to your skin like an invisible stain. It's not just you, it's everyone. The dormitory smells of sweat and damp wool, of unwashed bodies pressed close together on straw mattresses that never quite dry between nights. You've learned to ignore it, or at least to pretend you have. But deep down, you know the truth. You're filthy, and there's nothing you can do about it. Bathing is a luxury reserved for the wealthy, and even then, it's rare. For nuns, it's practically unheard of. Water is precious, drawn from wells by hand and carried long distances. It's needed for cooking, for washing clothes, for cleaning the chapel floors, not for indulgences like cleanliness. Some monasteries might allow a full bath once a year, usually before Easter, but most rely on quick rinses with basin water and scraps of coarse linen cloths. Forget soap. Forget perfumed oils or rosewater baths. Those are things whispered about in the stories novices tell each other late at night. Tales of noble women who once soaked in tubs lined with lavender petals. Here, you're lucky if you get to wipe your face without someone scolding you for wasting water. Historians still argue whether medieval nuns truly avoided bathing out of religious conviction or simply because of practical limitations. Some sources claim that the church discouraged frequent washing, linking it to vanity or even sinfulness. Others suggest it was more about resource management, keeping convents running without modern plumbing or heating systems. Whatever the reason, the result is the same. You live in a world where dirt is normal, where lice are common, where the stench of unwashed flesh becomes as familiar as the scent of your own breath. Your habit doesn't help. It's thick and scratchy, made of rough wool that traps sweat and grime against your skin. Beneath it, your body itches constantly, fingers twitching with the urge to scratch but too afraid to draw attention. Lice are rampant. Some sisters swear they've seen them crawling through their hair in the dim light of morning. Fleas aren't uncommon either, sneaking in from the straw bedding or the animals kept in the monastery barns. There's no privacy for anything, not even basic hygiene. When you need to relieve yourself, you go to the latrine house, a wooden structure built over a ditch or river. It's cold in winter, swarming with flies in summer, and always reeking of waste. There are no stalls, only a row of holes carved into the bench, forcing you to sit side by side with your sisters while trying to maintain some semblance of dignity. Menstruation is the worst. There's no discussion of it, no preparation, no clean rags or herbal remedies handed out by kindly older sisters. You learn about it the hard way, blood soaking through your undergarments one day, confusion turning to shame when you realize what's happening. You wrap cloth around yourself as best you can, hoping no one notices the stains. If they do, they say nothing, but you feel their eyes on you anyway, watching, judging. Some sisters suffer terribly during their cycles, cramping so badly they collapse during prayers. Others bleed so heavily they leave dark smears on the stone floor. There's no treatment beyond prayer and fasting. Sometimes vinegar-soaked cloths or crushed herbs if the abbess feels generous. But mostly, you endure it in silence like everything else. And heaven help you if you're caught doing something as simple as changing your rags in private. Modesty is enforced with ruthless efficiency. Nudity, even partial, is considered sinful, a temptation to impure thoughts. If a nun is found washing herself in secret, she may be punished with extra chores or forced kneeling sessions in the chapel. If she's discovered using any kind of contraceptive or abortifacient herb, well, that's a different story entirely. That's witchcraft. That's heresy. So you suffer quietly. You scratch beneath your habit when no one is looking. You wash your face quickly before morning prayers, hoping the damp cloth removes enough grime to avoid notice. You try not to breathe too deeply when passing another sister in the hallway, though the effort often fails. Sometimes you dream of water, of standing beneath a warm rain, letting it soak through your hair and rinse away the layers of filth clinging to your skin, of scrubbing your nails until they shine again, of smelling like something other than sweat and damp wool. But dreams don't clean bodies. And here, cleanliness isn't next to godliness. It's barely tolerated at all. The lack of hygiene isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. Infections spread quickly in cramped quarters, especially during the warmer months when the heat makes everything worse. Boils crop up on arms and thighs, red and angry. Ringworm circles pale skin like ghostly targets. Coughs turn into fevers, fevers into deathbed vigils. There are remedies, of course, or what passes for them. Sister Agnes keeps a small store of dried herbs behind the storeroom door. Chamomile for pain, sage for fever, yarrow for wounds. She'll give you a pinch of powdered chalk if your stomach rebels, or let you sniff vinegar-soaked rags if you faint during Massachusetts. But real medicine, real care, that's for the wealthy, for those outside these walls. Inside you pray, you fast, you suffer. One girl, Sister Beatrice, died last winter from a wound on her foot that festered until it turned black. She'd tripped on the icy path leading from the laundry shed, scraping open her heel. No one noticed at first. By the time she started limping, the swelling had already set in. They wrapped it in wool soaked in wine, which probably did more harm than good. Within days, she was burning with fever, muttering nonsense about angels and fire. The abbess ordered prayers for her soul while she still breathed. They buried her before Vespers. No one talks about it anymore. You make sure to check your feet every night. Make sure there's no redness, no swelling. You rub your hands together, looking for cracks, searching for signs of sickness hiding beneath calluses. You've learned that survival means paying attention to your body, even if no one else will. Even the chickens get better care. At least they have fresh air. At least they can scratch the ground. At least they aren't expected to live in perpetual silence, wearing the same dress every day, sleeping in the same spot, breathing the same stale air year after year after year. You wonder sometimes if God even notices how you live. If he sees the way lice crawl through your hair. If he hears your silent pleas when your body screams for relief. Maybe he does. Maybe he thinks it's good for your soul. Or maybe he's just as tired of the smell as you are. Your hands ache. They always do. The rough wool of your habit scratches against raw knuckles. The skin cracked and red from endless scrubbing, hauling, and writing. There's no rest for them. No soft gloves, no soothing oils, no reprieve. They are tools, like the quills you grip so tightly that your fingers cramp, like the buckets you carry from well to kitchen, like the brooms you sweep across stone floors until your arms tremble with exhaustion. There's no escape from labor. A nun's life is not one of idle prayer alone. It is work, ceaseless and unrelenting. You rise before dawn, not just to pray, but to clean. You chant psalms between chores, kneeling in chapel only to be summoned back to the laundry shed or the bakery. Even the most educated sisters, those who can read Latin and write illuminated manuscripts, spend their days bent over desks by candlelight, copying scripture until their eyes blur and ink stains their fingertips. And still, there is never enough time. Every hour is accounted for, every minute dictated by the tolling of bells. When you're not praying, you're working. When you're not working, you're being punished for not working hard enough. There is no leisure, no play, no indulgence, not even a moment to sit quietly and let your mind wander. You've learned to move quickly, to anticipate orders before they're given. You know which pails to fill first, which cloths to wring out without dripping on the floor, which corners of the cloister collect the most dust. You've memorized the routines of the other sisters, adjusting your pace to match theirs so as not to stand out. It's not that you want to impress anyone. It's that drawing attention means scrutiny, and scrutiny leads to punishment. Historians still argue whether medieval nuns saw their labor as spiritual devotion or simply as drudgery disguised as piety. Some records suggest that convents were centers of learning and craftsmanship, where women produced beautiful textiles, copied sacred texts, and brewed medicines still used today. Others paint a bleaker picture, one where physical toil was meant to suppress rebellion, to keep bodies too exhausted for disobedience. You know which version is true, because your body bears the proof. Your palms are calloused from years of scrubbing stone, your nails permanently stained with dye from crushed plants used in manuscript painting. Your back aches from bending over wash basins, your feet blistered from standing too long in the kitchen or weaving room. There are burns on your forearms from spilled wax and boiling water, scars from sharp knives used in the dairy barn, bruises from hauling sacks of grain and firewood. No one asks if you're hurt. No one offers help. Pain is expected. Endurance is praised. If you cry out, you are reminded that Christ suffered far worse on the cross. So you suffer too, in silence, with bowed head, with calloused hands. Some tasks are more bearable than others. The scriptorium, though dimly lit and cold, at least allows you to sit. Here, you copy psalms on a parchment made from dried animal hide, using ink mixed from soot, vinegar, and oak galls. The process is slow, meticulous. One mistake, a smudged letter, a misaligned line, and you must start again. The abbess does not tolerate imperfection. Other sisters paint elaborate initials at the beginning of each passage, using crushed lapis lazuli for blue, cinnabar for red, gold leaf for the holiest words. Their hands are steadier than yours, their brushstrokes delicate despite the chapped skin and trembling fingers. You envy them. At least their suffering is hidden beneath beauty. But most of your days are spent elsewhere. In a laundry house where you beat wet cloth against stone slabs until your shoulders scream. In the kitchen where you stir bubbling pots of thin broth and moldy bread. In the garden where you weed vegetable patches and gather herbs under the watchful eye of the abbess's deputy. And then there's the latrine duty. No one speaks of it openly, but everyone knows who is assigned. You dread the day it falls to you. The stench alone is enough to make your stomach churn. The wooden shovels slick with filth as you scrape waste into carts that will be dumped outside the walls. If you hesitate, if you gag, if you miss a spot, you'll be sent back again the next day. Punishment for weakness. Even the animals live better lives. The cows have fresh straw bedding. The chickens roam freely in the courtyard. The pigs wallow in mud baths when it rains. But you are expected to endure everything: cold, hunger, pain, filth, with nothing but silent obedience. And yet, some sisters find ways to rebel. Not with swords or riots, but with small, quiet defiance. A novice hides scraps of bread beneath her mattress. A lay sister whispers forbidden stories during night prayers. Another lets a candle burn too long, filling the dormitory with warmth before it's snuffed out. You don't dare join them. Not yet. Instead, you focus on your work. You bend, scrub, lift, carry. You follow the rules, keep your eyes lowered, and try not to think about how much your hands hurt. Because the moment you do, the bell rings again. Another service. Another round of prayers. Another shift in the kitchens or gardens. There's no end to it. Only repetition, until your body gives out. Your stomach growls. It always does. But tonight, something feels different. The air in the refectory carries a faint scent of herbs. Rosemary, maybe, or thyme. And for once, the broth ladled into your bowl doesn't look quite as watery as usual. A few slivers of fish float near the surface, pale and boiled beyond recognition. But it's something. It's more than yesterday's meal of stale bread soaked in lukewarm water. It's a feast day, or at least that's what the abbess called it this morning before matins. Some saint's anniversary, some holy occasion that warrants an extra pinch of salt in the soup and 2 slices of bread instead of 1. You try to feel grateful. You really did. But all you could think about was how even this so-called luxury barely qualifies as nourishment. Historians still argue whether medieval nuns truly fasted as strictly as their rules dictated, or if convent kitchens occasionally bent the rules when supplies were plentiful. Some records suggest that certain monasteries enjoyed surprisingly rich diets during major feasts, serving roasted meats and honeyed pastries behind closed doors. Others insist that such indulgences were rare, reserved only for high-ranking clergy or noble women who brought their own cooks with them. You've never seen anything like that. Fish is the closest thing to meat you'll ever get, and even that is served so rarely that its arrival feels like a cruel joke. Fish caught in nearby rivers, gutted and salted until it loses every trace of flavor, boiled until it turns rubbery, then dropped into broth that tastes more like the pot it was cooked in than any real seasoning. And yet you eat, slowly, carefully, savoring each bite like it might be your last. You watch the nun across from you do the same, her eyes fixed on her bowl like it might vanish if she blinks too long. No one speaks. No one dares. Even on feast days, silence reigns supreme in the refectory, enforced by the ever-watchful eye of the abbess, who sits at the head of the hall like a queen surveying her subjects. You wonder if she eats better than the rest of you. Probably. Some abbesses came from noble families, trained in courtly manners before taking their vows. They knew how to wield power, how to negotiate with local lords for extra grain shipments, how to ensure that their personal cells remained stocked with wine and dried fruit while the others starved. Whether they shared these luxuries depended entirely on their temperament. The current abbess does not share. She believes hunger is good for the soul. That deprivation purifies. That suffering brings one closer to God. So you suffer. You fast through Lent, through Advent, through endless Fridays when no meat is allowed and even the fish runs dry. You kneel longer after meals when someone spills a drop of broth on the tablecloth. You endure bread so hard it chips your teeth and soup so thin you can see the bottom of the bowl through it. Sometimes you dream of food, not just any food, real food. Roasted apples dripping with honey, fresh-baked loaves warm from the oven, sweet figs wrapped in soft cheese, rich stews thick with vegetables and spiced meat. You imagine biting into crusty rolls, feeling warmth spread through your belly, licking your fingers clean without fear of punishment. But dreams don't fill stomachs. And here, gluttony is a sin. Even thinking about food too much is frowned upon. One novice was once punished for sighing too loudly during dinner, muttering something about missing butter on her bread. She spent 3 days kneeling in the chapel, forbidden from speaking or eating anything but dry crusts and water. You keep your thoughts to yourself. You bow your head lower than the others, hoping the abbess won't notice the way your fingers twitch toward your empty plate. You fold your hands neatly in your lap, pretending you're full, pretending you're satisfied, pretending you aren't starving. Outside, in the village, people celebrate feast days with music and dancing, with roasted pigs and barrels of ale. Children chase each other through the streets, mouths sticky with candied nuts and honey cakes. But here, behind the convent walls, celebration means slightly less starvation. A privilege, a mercy, a test. And tests, are meant to be endured. So you endure. You chant your thanks after the meal, mouth moving around words you barely hear. You rise with the others, walking slowly, deliberately, careful not to stumble from weakness. You pass through the cloister, where the scent of damp stone and candle wax clings to the air, and you let your mind drift. Back to before the vows, before the silence, before the hunger became a second skin. You remember sitting at a wooden table, warm bread placed in front of you, still steaming from the hearth. You remember the taste of butter melting against your tongue, the sweetness of ripe berries picked fresh from the garden. You remember laughter, conversation, hands reaching across the table, passing bowls filled with real food, real life. Now there's only this, only prayers, only work, only hunger, even on feast days. The next morning begins like all the others. No lingering scent of herbs. No extra slice of bread. Just the familiar routine. Matins before dawn, followed by chores, followed by another round of silent meals where every bite is measured and mourned. You try not to think about the feast day meal as you scrub pots in the kitchen, hands raw from cold water and rough brushes. You try not to dwell on the taste of salt or the memory of something close to real food. But hunger has a way of sharpening the senses, making you notice things you normally wouldn't. Like the locked cupboard in the storeroom. You've passed it 100 times, never given it a second thought. But today, curiosity prickles at the edge of your mind. What's inside? Dried fruits? Spices? Wine? Treasures? Forbidden ones? You glance over your shoulder. Sister Agnes is busy sorting sacks of grain, humming softly under her breath. The abbess is nowhere in sight. You hesitate. Then, slowly, you reach for the latch. It doesn't budge. Of course it doesn't. The key hangs around the abbess's neck, hidden beneath layers of habit and authority. You'll never get near it. And even if you did, what would you do? Take a single apple? A handful of raisins? Would it be worth the punishment? Probably not. Still, the temptation lingers. Because hunger changes people. It makes thieves of saints. It makes rebels out of the obedient. And sometimes it makes you wish for death. Not because you want to leave this world, but because you're tired of surviving it. It starts with a cough. At first, it's nothing unusual. Just another dry rasp in the cold chapel air, lost beneath the murmur of Latin prayers. You don't think much of it. Coughs are common here. The damp stone, the endless hours kneeling on cold floors, the thin wool of your habit. It all wears on the body. People fall ill all the time. Some recover, others don't. But this is different. Within days, more sisters begin to cough. Then comes the fever, hot and relentless, burning through their bodies like wildfire. Their skin flushes red, then turns pale as death creeps closer. Dark bruises bloom across their arms and necks, strange black swellings rising beneath their chins and in their armpits. They shiver even under heavy blankets, moaning in pain as their bodies betray them. The plague has come, and no vow, no prayer, no act of devotion will stop it. Historians still argue whether medieval nuns were more or less likely to survive epidemics than women outside convent walls. Some say the cloistered life should have protected them, separated from the filth of crowded towns, shielded by strict routines and religious discipline. But others point to the reality. Cramped quarters, shared sleeping spaces, and limited medical knowledge made monasteries prime breeding grounds for disease. And when the Black Death arrived, it spared no one, not even God's most faithful servants. You watch as the sick are moved into the infirmary, a small, dimly lit room at the far end of the dormitory where Sister Agnes tends to them with vinegar-soaked rags and whispered prayers. There's no cure, no medicine strong enough to fight what's coming. Some sisters beg for confession before they die. Others drift in and out of consciousness, muttering names of people long forgotten. And then the deaths begin. One sister gone by morning, two more by nightfall. The bell tolls again and again, each solemn ring marking another soul lost to the pestilence. The abbess orders extra prayers, hoping divine intervention might halt the spread. She forbids gatherings, bans handshakes, insists everyone pray with heads bowed and eyes lowered. But it makes no difference. The plague moves fast, too fast. You try not to look at the faces of the dead. Try not to remember how they laughed once, how they hummed while scrubbing floors or braiding their hair before bed. Now they lie still beneath white sheets, their bodies wrapped tightly before being carried away in wooden carts. The grave pits grow deeper by the day, filled with more bodies than anyone can count. Even the priests refuse to come near anymore. Some fled the moment they heard of the sickness. Others tried to help at first, offering last rites and blessings, but soon fell ill themselves. One was buried just beyond the convent walls, his cross still clutched in stiff fingers. You wonder if God is angry, or if he notices at all. There's no escape from the fear that clings to you, like the stench of death in the halls. You wash your hands until they crack and bleed. Rinse your mouth with wine because someone whispered it might keep the sickness at bay. You avoid touching door handles, sleep with a cloth tied around your nose, clutch your rosary so tightly that your palms ache. But still you wait. Wait to feel the fever creeping into your bones. Wait to see the black spots blooming beneath your skin. Wait for the moment when someone else will wrap your body in linen and carry you away without ceremony. You're not alone in your dread. In the corners of the cloister, sisters whisper about curses and demons, about witches who poisoned the wells or sinners whose wickedness angered heaven. Some blame themselves, scouring their memories for sins they may have committed. Perhaps they ate too eagerly on feast days or sighed too loudly during prayers. Punishment, they say. Divine punishment. But you're not sure anymore. You've seen holy women die screaming. You've watched nuns who never spoke an unkind word collapse mid-prayer, their final breath stolen before they could finish their last amen. If virtue could protect you, wouldn't they still be alive? Instead, you do what you must to survive. You avoid the sick. You work twice as hard to prove your strength. You pray louder than ever, begging God to spare you. Not because you deserve it, but because you're afraid. Because dying like this, it's not peaceful. It's not merciful. It's not what you imagined when you took your vows. Outside the convent walls, the world burns. Village empty au verdict. Markets stand silent. Children wander alone, searching for parents who will never return. And inside, behind locked doors and thick stone walls, you cling to routine as if it might protect you. But deep down, you know the truth. The plague does not care who you are. It does not care how many prayers you chant or how many hours you kneel. It takes him it pleases. And one morning, when you wake up gasping for breath, your throat burning with fever, you finally understand what the others must have felt. The terror, the helplessness, the certainty that you are already dead. You don't tell anyone. Not at first. You pretend everything is normal. Join the others for matins, chant your psalms, bow your head low during readings. But your voice cracks with every word. Your limbs tremble beneath the weight of your habit, and your vision blurs with every step you take. You stumble during chores, earning sharp glances from the abbess, but she says nothing. Perhaps she already knows. Perhaps she's just waiting. By midday, the fever worsens. Sweat soaks through your undergarments. Your pulse thrums in your ears like a war drum. You press a shaking hand to your neck, feeling the swollen lump beneath your jaw, and your stomach churns with dread. This is it. You're going to die. No one comes to comfort you. No one dares. Even Sister Agnes, who tends to the sick with unwavering devotion, only nods grimly when she sees you standing in the doorway of the infirmary. There's no space left. No beds. Just rows of bodies wrapped in linen, some still breathing, others already cold. She offers you a bowl of vinegar water and a damp cloth. That's all she can give. You retreat to a quiet corner of the dormitory, curling onto your straw mattress as the fever tightens its grip. You close your eyes and listen to the distant tolling of the bell, to the muffled weeping of younger novices, to the silence of a God who does not answer your prayers. You dream of home, of warmth, of clean air, of food that didn't taste like ash. And then you forget. You forget the sound of laughter. You forget the color of the sky. You forget your own name. When you wake, if you wake, you'll find yourself among the living, somehow spared. Or you'll be gone, another soul claimed by the pestilence, another nameless body buried in a mass grave. Either way, your suffering ends, and the plague marches on. You hear it first in the silence, a breath held too long, a glance that lingers a second too much, a name whispered not in prayer, but in longing. It shouldn't surprise you. You've lived here long enough to know that even behind thick stone walls, even under the watchful eye of the abbess, even beneath layers of wool and vow, desire still finds a way. But you pretend not to notice. You lower your eyes when Sister Beatrice brushes past you in the corridor, her hand grazing yours for just a moment too long. You don't react when Sister Margaret hums softly during chores, the melody one you remember from childhood lullabies, soft, tender, almost loving. You keep your voice steady when you pass Sister Eleanor in the cloister, her fingers curling inward like she wants to reach for you, but can't. No one speaks of it. Not aloud. Not ever. Because this is the gravest sin of all. Historians still argue whether romantic or sexual relationships between nuns were common in medieval convents or merely the stuff of scandalous rumors. Some records suggest that female monastic communities developed deep emotional bonds, with sisters referring to each other as spiritual spouses or beloved companions. Others hint at something more. Letters exchanged in secret, poems written in hidden corners of prayer books, confessions forced through punishment and fear. You know what it feels like? You feel it every time Sister Beatrice sits beside you during Vespers, close enough that her sleeve brushes against yours. You feel it when Sister Margaret finds excuses to work beside you in the laundry house, her hands moving in quiet rhythm with yours. You feel it in the way Sister Eleanor watches you during meals, silent and still, her eyes saying everything her lips cannot. And yet you say nothing, because if anyone suspects, if the abbess suspects, well, there are punishments for many sins. But for this, there is only ruin. Some sisters have been sent away without explanation, their names erased from the convent's records as if they had never existed. Others were locked in solitary confinement for weeks, fed only bread and water until they confessed to thoughts they may or may not have had. A few were rumored to have taken their own lives rather than face the shame of public penance. So you endure. You obey. You bury the feeling before it can bloom. But sometimes, late at night, when the dormitory is dark and the others are asleep, you let yourself imagine. Imagine what it would be like to touch her hand without fear. To walk with her beyond the cloister walls, where no one watches, where no one judges. To whisper her name not in prayer, but in love. You wonder if she dreams of you too, if she lies awake, heart pounding, wondering if you'll ever look at her the way she looks at you, if she dares to hope, or if she too has already given up. The rules are clear. Love is for God alone. Desire is temptation. Affection is weakness. To feel anything else is to invite damnation. Still, the whispers continue. In the garden, where novices trade stolen glances behind rows of herbs. In a refectory where a nun drops a spoon and another bends to pick it up, fingers brushing in the hush of candlelight. In the chapel where prayers sound different, softer, quieter, as if spoken to someone standing just out of reach. Forbidden love doesn't need words. It thrives in silence, in stolen moments, in hearts that beat faster than they should. And you are not immune. No matter how many times you remind yourself of your vows, no matter how many times you kneel and beg for forgiveness, no matter how many times you tell yourself that this cannot be, you still feel it. And that, perhaps, is the greatest sin of all. One evening, after Compline, you linger near the cloister wall, pretending to tie your sandal. The others file past, heads bowed, habits rustling like dry leaves. But then she appears, Sister Beatrice. She walks slowly, deliberately, falling in a step beside you as if by accident. Your pulse quickens. You don't look at her. You can't. Not yet. But then she speaks. Softly, quietly, just one word. Tonight. Your breath catches. You don't ask what she means. You don't need to. You know, and you know the risk. If you're caught, if anyone sees you together, if anyone overhears even a single word spoken between you, it will be worse than punishment. Worse than exile. You'll be marked, tainted, ruined, but still you nod. Once, a barely perceptible movement. Enough. Enough for now. The rest will come later. When the dormitory falls silent and the last candle flickers low, you wait. Wait until the breathing around you settles into sleep. Wait until the wind outside muffles every sound you might make. Then, carefully, silently, you slip from your straw mattress and move toward the door. The cloister is empty. Moonlight spills across the stone floor, casting long shadows that stretch like ghosts across the walls. And there she is, waiting. Heart pounding, you cross the distance between you. She takes your hand, not roughly, not desperately, but gently, reverently, like she's afraid you might vanish if she holds on too tight. Neither of you speak. Words are dangerous here, too easily overheard, too easily remembered. Instead, she leads you down a narrow passage, past the storerooms and into the shadowed corner where no candles burn. Here, in the darkness, you finally breathe again. And then she kisses you, softly, carefully, like it might break both of you. You kiss her back, tentatively at first, then deeper, desperate for the warmth of human touch, for the taste of something real, something forbidden. Her hands find yours, fingers interlacing like a promise neither of you can make aloud. This is madness. This is treason. This is everything you've buried for years, clawing its way to the surface. And for a moment, just a moment, you let go. You forget the vows. Forget the abyss. Forget the bell that will ring again in a few short hours. All that exists is this. Her. You. The stolen seconds ticking past like falling stars. Until footsteps echo nearby. A shift in the air. A warning. You pull away, heart hammering, eyes wide. She nods once, understanding. Then she slips back into the shadows, disappearing like mist beneath moonlight. You return to the dormitory alone. You lie still beneath your thin blanket, listening to the quiet breathing around you. You press trembling fingers to your lips, trying to hold onto the ghost of her kiss. And you wonder, did anyone see? Did anyone hear? Will the abbess call your name tomorrow? Will punishment come swiftly, or will it wait, lurking in the silence like a blade behind your back? You don't know, but you do know this. Whatever happens next, whatever comes because of tonight, you would do it again. You breathe too loudly. That's the accusation, anyway. A sister saw you slump your shoulders during prime. Another claims you sighed during lauds. Someone, maybe the abbess herself, says your posture was too lax during vespers. It doesn't matter if it's true. What matters is that someone noticed. And now, punishment is inevitable. The bell tolls once. A signal. You know what it means. All eyes turn to you as you step forward, head bowed, hands clasped tightly in front of you. The refectory falls silent, even the clink of wooden spoons against bowls ceasing as the others watch. No one speaks. No one moves. They've seen this before. They know better than to intervene. Kneel. The word cuts through the air like a blade. You obey. Stone bites into your knees, cold and unyielding. You press your forehead to the floor, spine straight, fingers curled inward. This is the position of penance, of submission, of guilt, whether real or imagined. And then comes the sentence. 7 days of bread and water. 3 hours of kneeling after each service. And 2 weeks in solitary. Your stomach drops. Solitary. Even the word alone is enough to make your breath hitch. Not because of the silence. It's not like you're used to conversation anyway. But because of what happens in that darkness. The mind unravels there. Thought becomes echo. Time stretches until it breaks. Historians still argue whether medieval nuns were punished more severely than monks for similar infractions. Some records suggest that female monastic discipline was stricter, designed to suppress what many believe to be women's naturally weaker will. Others insist that punishments varied by convent, dictated more by the temperament of the abbess than any official rule. But here, obedience is everything. And disobedience, real or perceived, is met with swift retribution. Some sisters have been locked away for weeks over far less. One girl wept openly during Compline and was accused of vanity. Another dropped a candle and was sentenced to 10 days without meat. A few whispered among themselves during chores and were made to kneel on pebbles until their knees bled. And you breathed wrong. Or maybe you looked tired. Maybe you blinked at the wrong moment. It hardly matters. The verdict has been spoken, and so you endure. The first few days pass slowly. You are led to the solitary cell just beyond the dormitory, a small, windowless room barely large enough to stretch out in. There is no bed, only straw scattered across the stone floor. No light, save for the faint glow that slips beneath the door. No sound but your own breathing and the occasional drip of water from somewhere unseen. At first, you try to keep track of time. You count the number of times the bell rings. You mark days by the meals you do not receive, bread and water, always the same, always insufficient. You whisper prayers under your breath, hoping they might anchor you to something real. But soon, even that fades. Thoughts become tangled. Memories blur. You begin to hear voices that aren't there. Feel hands brushing your arm when no one is near. You forget what day it is. Forget how long you've been here. Forget who you were before this. When they finally let you out, you stagger into the corridor like a ghost emerging from the grave. Your limbs ache. Your vision swims. You blink against the sudden light, flinching as voices rise around you. Too loud, too sharp, too much. No one speaks to you. They never do after solitary. It's as if you were never gone, as if you were never punished, as if you were never you. And yet, you return to your place in line, bow your head, and continue. Because that is what you do. You survive. You obey. You suffer. And you pray that next time, you won't breathe too loudly. The days drag. After solitary, you move like a shadow among the others, your body present, but your mind still caught in the echoes of that tiny room. You chant the psalms, but your voice lacks strength. You scrub the floors, but your hands tremble. You kneel during services, but your thoughts drift elsewhere, anywhere but here. And still, the punishment continues. 3 hours of kneeling after every service. Matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, nun, vespers, compline. Each session feels longer than the last, your legs trembling beneath you, your back screaming in protest. The other sisters pass you without a glance, pretending you don't exist. Even the youngest novices avoid your eyes. Only Sister Beatrice dares to look at you, not with pity, not with fear, but with something else, something dangerous. She passes you a bowl of broth during dinner, her hand lingering just a second too long. She whispers nothing, says nothing, but her eyes speak volumes. You're still here. You survived. And for the first time in weeks, you feel something stir inside you. Not hope, not yet, but something close. Still, you know better than to show gratitude, better than to acknowledge her kindness. If the abbess sees, if she suspects anything, no, you bow your head lower. You swallow your thanks. You endure, because that is all you can do. For now. But deep down, beneath the layers of habit and vow and punishment, you remember what it felt like to be touched, to be seen, to be known, and that memory burns brighter than any punishment ever could. You watch Sister Beatrice disappear down the corridor, her footsteps silent against the stone floor. She's gone again, off to the scriptorium under the abbess's orders, copying psalms by candlelight until her fingers bleed. Or maybe she's been sent to the laundry house, scrubbing stained habits in icy water until her knuckles crack. It doesn't matter where they send her. What matters is that she goes without protest. But you're tired of bowing your head, tired of kneeling longer than the others, tired of pretending that this life, the silence, the hunger, the punishments, is what you chose. And you're not the only one. There are whispers, always whispers, in the cloister at dusk, in the dormitory after Compline, in the garden when no one is watching. Stories pass between sisters like contraband, tales of those who dared to defy their fate. Some wrote letters, secret messages hidden inside prayer books, smuggled out through sympathetic servants or visiting priests. One nun, Sister Isabella of France, was said to have filled an entire volume of illuminated manuscripts with coded complaints about life behind convent walls. She vanished shortly after. Others turned to fire. A few daring souls lit candles beneath forbidden texts, setting ablaze records that bound them to lives they never wanted. One monastery burned to the ground in the middle of winter, its ashes carried away on a wind that smelled of smoke and rebellion. But most tried to run. Some disguised themselves as pilgrims, slipping past the gates under cover of darkness. Others bribed guards or fled into the woods, living off stolen bread and whispered prayers. A rare few even found refuge in distant cities, changing their names and vanishing into obscurity. Historians still argue whether these rebellions were common or exaggerated by later writers eager to paint medieval nuns as tragic heroines rather than obedient servants of God. But you know better. You've seen the signs, the scratched-out names in old ledgers, the missing rosaries left behind like forgotten promises, the rumors of a sister who escaped through a tunnel dug beneath the bakery. And now you feel it too, that restless pull in your chest, that ache in your bones, the knowledge that if you stay here much longer, something inside you will break beyond repair. So you begin a plan, carefully, quietly, with the same patience you learned while copying scripture, the same precision you mastered while folding altar cloths. You memorize the rhythms of the day, the tolling of the bell, the movement of the sisters, the moments when the abbess turns her back. You learn which doors creak the loudest, which windows can be opened without waking the dormitory, which paths lead beyond the convent walls and into the unknown. It won't be easy. Escape never is. If caught, you'll be punished worse than before, locked in solitary for months, stripped of your habit, forced to wear chains until your wrists bleed. Or worse, you'll be handed over to secular authorities, branded a heretic, or worse. But you don't care. Not anymore. Because staying means dying a slow death, piece by piece, until there's nothing left of the girl who once dreamed of running through fields and chasing butterflies. So you wait, you listen, you watch, and when the time comes, you run. Fast, quiet, without looking back. Underscore, 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 underscore. The night is darker than usual. Clouds smother the moon, casting the courtyard in thick shadows. You press yourself against the cold stone wall, heart pounding so loudly it feels like it might give you away. Sister Margaret waits just ahead, her silhouette barely visible in the dim light. She nods once. Now, you move. Your feet barely make a sound against the flagstones as you slip past the storeroom, then the kitchen, then the chapel. Each step brings you closer to freedom. Each breath feels heavier than the last. Behind you, the convent sleeps, or pretends to. You pass the dormitory window, catching a glimpse of the rows of straw mattresses, the soft breathing of sleeping novices. For a moment, you hesitate. Some of them are girls you grew up with. Some are women who shared scraps of bread with you when you were starving. Some even knew what you were planning and said nothing. They let you go, and in doing so, they gave you the greatest gift of all, a chance, a real one. You keep moving, past the gatehouse, past the garden, past the well where you used to draw water before dawn, and then you reach the outer wall. Sister Beatrice is already there, waiting beside a rope ladder someone must have tied to the battlements earlier that evening. Her eyes meet yours, dark with fear, but also hope. "Hurry," she whispers. You don't need to be told twice. You grab the ropes and climb. Your hands burn from the rough fibers. Your legs tremble with exhaustion, but you don't stop. Not until you're over the top. Not until you drop silently onto the other side. Freedom. Real, terrifying, impossible freedom. For a moment, you stand there, breathing in air that doesn't smell of candle wax or damp wool. Air that smells like earth and grass and open sky. Like the world outside. Like life. And then you run. You don't look back. You don't stop. You just run. Through fields and forests, past villages wrapped in sleep, toward a future you can't yet see. Behind you, the bells begin to ring. They've noticed. They'll come looking. But by then, you'll be gone. And somewhere, deep inside the convent walls, Sister Beatrice watches the horizon. Waiting, praying, hoping, and maybe, just maybe, planning her own escape. She knows. Before you've even moved a muscle, before your thoughts have fully formed into intent, she already knows. The abbess, tall, severe, eyes like flint, stands at the head of the refectory, watching. Always watching. Her presence is a weight in the room, pressing down on every nun who dares to breathe too loudly or shift too much in her seat. She doesn't need to speak. Just a glance is enough to make your stomach twist. You lower your eyes. You always do, because to meet her gaze is to invite scrutiny, and scrutiny leads to punishment. Historians still argue whether medieval abbesses wielded more power than their male counterparts in monasteries. Some say they did, tasked not only with spiritual guidance, but also with managing land, finances, and discipline within female communities that often rivaled small towns in size. Others insist that their authority was limited, constrained by both church doctrine and the men who oversaw them. But here the abbess is the law, and she rules with an iron will. No detail escapes her notice. She sees when a novice slouches during prayers. She hears when a sister sighs too loudly during chores. She knows when someone has been where they shouldn't be, spoken to the wrong person, or, worst of all, questioned their place behind these walls. There are rumors about how she learned to see so much. Some say she keeps spies among the nuns, younger sisters who whisper secrets in exchange for better rations or lighter punishments. Others claim she has a mirror enchanted by holy relics, allowing her to watch every corridor, every dormitory, every hidden corner of the convent. You don't know if any of it is true, but you do know this. She never misses a thing. Not the missing spoon from the kitchen. Not the misplaced candle in the chapel. Not the way Sister Beatrice sometimes looks at you when she thinks no one is watching. And now she suspects something. You can feel it in the way her gaze lingers just a second too long as you file past after Vespers. You keep your steps measured, your hands folded neatly in front of you, your head bowed low. But inside, your heart hammers like a war drum. Did someone talk? Did someone see? Did she hear what you whispered to Sister Margaret last night? Or worse, did she read the note you left tucked beneath the prayer book? You don't know. And that's what terrifies you most. Because the abbess doesn't need proof. She needs only doubt. And doubt is enough to condemn you. So when the bell tolls again that evening, once, twice, you feel your stomach drop. It's happening. Again, you step forward without being called, knowing it's expected. The others part around you like water, silent, eyes fixed on the floor. No one will look at you. No one will speak for you, because that's how it works here. You stand before her, knees weak, breath shallow. She doesn't speak at first. She doesn't need to. Instead, she lifts a single hand and points. To the stocks. A cold shiver runs through you. Public humiliation. The worst kind. They drag you forward forcing you to kneel before the wooden frame. It creaks as it opens, the heavy top slamming down over your neck and wrists, locking you in place. A few novices gasp. Some older sisters shake their heads. But no one moves to stop it. No one ever does. The abbess finally speaks. "Let this be a lesson," she says, voice calm, unwavering. "Disobedience breeds corruption. Doubt spreads like rot. And those who forget their vows must be reminded." Then she turns away, as if you no longer matter, as if you were never truly seen to begin with. The courtyard falls silent. You're alone now, exposed to the world beyond the cloister. Outside, villagers pass by, some pausing to stare, others hurrying past like they want no part in this spectacle. Children point. Farmers mutter. A dog barks somewhere in the distance. But you stay still. You endure, because that is what you've learned. That is what you must do, until, hours later, someone finally releases you. Your limbs ache. Your throat is dry. Your dignity stripped away like the habit you wear. And still, you return to your place in line, bowing your head as if nothing happened. Because that is what she wants. And because, deep down, this won't be the last time. Days pass, but the memory of the stocks clings to you like the scent of damp wool. You walk differently now, head slightly lowered, shoulders tense, eyes scanning every shadow for signs of the abbess's gaze. You speak less, move faster, avoid lingering near anyone for too long. Even Sister Beatrice keeps her distance, though her eyes betray the worry she cannot voice aloud. You wonder if she fears for herself now, if she knows that suspicion is contagious. That guilt doesn't require proof. One misstep, one whispered word, one stolen glance. That's all it takes. And yet, despite the fear curling in your chest, another feeling begins to grow. Resentment. It simmers beneath your skin, slow and quiet at first, then stronger, hotter. You think of the food she eats while you starve, of the private cell she retreats to while you sleep on straw, of the way she watches you suffer, never lifting a finger to ease the pain. You think of the women who came before you, those erased from the records, locked away, sent to distant monasteries where no one speaks of them again. You think of Sister Isabella, who wrote secret complaints into the margins of psalms, of Sister Eleanor, who vanished one winter morning without a trace, of Sister Margaret, who once tried to run and was made to kneel on stone until her legs gave out. And you wonder, how many more have suffered under her rule? How many more will? You don't dare ask aloud, but the thought lingers. It grows. It festers, like a wound that refuses to heal. And then one night you find it. A letter, tucked between the pages of a worn Bible in the scriptorium, written in careful, neat script, addressed to no one, signed by her, the abbess. And it isn't a prayer. It's a confession of sins, of secrets, of things no woman wearing the veil should ever admit. You read it once, twice, 3 times, just to be sure. And suddenly the balance shifts. Suddenly, the power is not entirely hers. And for the first time since you arrived here, you feel something stir inside you. Not fear, not obedience, not submission, but hope. The fever comes slowly at first. A dull ache behind your eyes. A chill that clings to your bones, even beneath the thick wool of your habit. You brush it off. Just fatigue, you tell yourself. Just another long day of kneeling and scrubbing and fasting catching up to you. But then the cough begins. Dry at first, then deep, rattling in your chest like something broken loose. Your throat burns with every swallow. Your limbs tremble beneath you. And still, you force yourself to stand during matins, to chant the psalms, to bow your head when the abbess passes. You do not speak of your pain, not aloud, because you know what will happen if you do. Historians still argue whether medieval nuns received any real medical care or if illness was almost always treated as spiritual failure. Some records suggest that convent infirmaries offered herbal remedies, warm broths, and quiet rest. A rare kindness in a world where suffering was often seen as divine instruction. Others paint a bleaker picture, one where sickness was met with prayer, fasting, and punishment rather than treatment. Here, illness is not a misfortune. It is a test, and sometimes it is a punishment. When Sister Agnes collapsed last winter, wheezing and shaking with fever, she was not taken to the infirmary right away. First, she was made to kneel before the altar for an hour, head bowed, lips moving in silent repentance. "What sin have I committed?" she whispered over and over again, her voice trembling with both fear and pain. Only after the abbess deemed her sufficiently humbled was she allowed to rest. By then it was too late. She died 2 days later. No one spoke of it much afterward. No prayers were said for her soul beyond the usual rites. Her name was quietly removed from the monastery's ledger, as if she had never existed at all. So you keep your silence. You hide the worst of your symptoms. You wrap yourself in extra layers when the cold creeps into your bones. You drink water to soothe your raw throat. You force yourself upright when your knees threaten to give out. But someone notices. Maybe it's the way your hands shake during chores. Maybe it's the way your breath catches mid-prayer. Or maybe it's simply that your time has come. Either way, the word spreads fast. You are unwell. And so, the punishment begins. First, they take your meals. Just bread and water now, no broth, no scraps of fish on feast days. Fasting purifies the body, the abbess says, her voice calm, unwavering. Let this be a lesson in humility. Then comes the isolation. You're moved to a small chamber near the dormitory, a space barely large enough to stretch out in. There is no fire here, no blankets, just straw beneath you and damp stone above. You curl into yourself at night, shivering beneath your habit, listening to the muffled sounds of life beyond the walls. Outside, the others continue their routines, chanting, sweeping, praying, as if nothing has changed, as if you were never there. And still, the fever climbs. Your skin burns. Your vision blurs. You drift in and out of sleep, lost in dreams that feel more real than waking life. Sometimes, you see your mother's face. Sometimes, you hear the sound of birdsong. Once, you swear you feel warm sunlight on your skin. But when you wake, there is only cold, only silence, only pain, and still, no medicine, no balm for your cracked lips, no herbs for your cough, no poultice for the swellings blooming beneath your arms. Instead, you are given a rosary. Pray, the nurse sister whispers, placing in your hand. God will heal you if you deserve it. You clutch the beads tightly, whispering Hail Marys under your breath. But the words offer no comfort, no warmth, no relief, and you begin to wonder, is this truly healing? Or is this just waiting to die? Some sisters believe in the power of prayer. They say faith can move mountains, that God rewards devotion with mercy. But you've seen too many good women suffer, too many holy voices silenced by sickness they never asked for. If piety could cure the body, wouldn't the abbess herself be immortal? Still you pray, because what else can you do? There is no physician here, no apothecary, no true medicine beyond vinegar-soaked rags and whispered blessings. When Sister Margaret fell ill last year, they wrapped her in linen soaked in wine. It did nothing but make her cough worse. When Brother Thomas visited from the nearby monastery and caught a fever, he was sent home without ceremony. His fate remains unknown. You suspect yours will be worse, because you cannot leave. You cannot run. You can only suffer, and suffer quietly. Days blur together. The bell tolls, but you no longer know how many times. You try to count, but your thoughts slip through your fingers like sand. You dream of food, of water, of cool air against your burning skin. And then, one night, you hear footsteps. Soft, slow. Someone slips inside. Sister Beatrice. She crouches beside you, pressing a damp cloth to your forehead. Her touch is gentle, too gentle, forbidden. You need more than prayers, she murmurs. She presses something into your palm. A small pouch. Warm. Herbal. You don't ask where she got it. You don't want to know. But you breathe in its scent, lavender, sage, something sharp and bitter. And for the first time in days, your lungs feel less tight. You look at her, eyes heavy with exhaustion. Why? You manage to whisper. She doesn't answer. She only nods once, then disappears into the dark. Morning comes, or perhaps it is still night. You can no longer tell. The door opens again. This time, it is not Sister Beatrice. It is the abbess. She stands in the doorway, tall and unmoving, her gaze sweeping over you like a judge assessing guilt. "You have been disobedient," she says. You blink, confused. "I have done nothing wrong." You murmur, your voice hoarse. Her eyes narrow. You sought help outside of God's will. You freeze. She knows. Somehow she knows. And now, there will be consequences. You weren't supposed to be there. The scriptorium was for copying prayers, not reading them. For transcribing scripture, not questioning it. But you were curious, always curious. And curiosity, as you've learned, is dangerous. You remember the moment clearly. The heavy wooden door creaked open just enough for you to slip inside, the scent of ink and parchment thick in the air. Candles flickered in their sconces, casting long shadows across rows of desks where nuns sat hunched over manuscripts, quills scratching against vellum. At first, you kept to your station, dipping your pen into ink, carefully forming letters under the watchful eye of the scribe master. But then, you saw it, a book unlike the others, bound in dark leather, its cover worn from years of use. Not a psalter or a book of hours like the rest, but something else entirely. Something hidden beneath a stack of sanctioned texts, almost as if it had been placed there deliberately to tempt, to test, to trap. You glanced around. No one was watching. Your fingers trembled as you reached for it. Just one page. Just one line. That's all you told yourself you would read. But once you opened it, once your eyes scanned the words, you were lost. It wasn't heresy. Not exactly. It was knowledge, philosophy, astronomy, medicine, history, ideas that had never been spoken aloud within these walls. Words that suggested the world was larger than the convent, that God did not demand ignorance, that women could be more than obedient servants of faith. Historians still argue whether medieval nuns were truly denied access to learning, or if some convents quietly encouraged literacy among their most trusted sisters. Records show that certain monastic communities produced illuminated manuscripts, translated ancient texts, and even corresponded with scholars across Europe. But for every story of intellectual flourishing, there are darker accounts. Books locked away, forbidden knowledge burned, nuns punished for asking questions they were never meant to ask. You should have known better. You didn't know better. And yet, you couldn't stop. Night after night, you returned to the scriptorium under the pretense of extra copying duty. You memorized the abbess's schedule, learned when the scribes changed shifts, discovered which shelves held the most dangerous truths. You read about the stars, about the movement of the heavens, about remedies that had nothing to do with prayer or fasting. And then someone saw you. Not the abbess, not one of the senior sisters, just a novice no older than 12, no louder than a whisper, who stared at you with wide, frightened eyes before slipping away into the dark. You tried to pretend nothing happened. You bowed your head lower during services. You worked harder in the laundry house. You spoke less, prayed longer, kept your hands folded in your lap whenever possible. But it didn't matter. They knew. And now, you're standing before the abbess, your heart pounding like a trapped animal's. She doesn't speak at first. She only watches. Then, slowly, she lifts a hand and gestures toward the table beside her. There it is. The book. Your crime. Its pages lie open, marked by a strip of red cloth. The ink smudged where your fingers lingered too long. You have strayed, the abbess finally says, voice cold as winter stone. You have sought wisdom outside the word of God. You swallow hard. I only wish to understand. You murmur. To understand what? She demands. To understand why you must suffer, why you must obey, or perhaps you think yourself wiser than the church. You don't answer, because you know what happens to those who challenge authority. Some are sent to solitary. Others are stripped of their duties, forced into menial labor until their spirits break. A few simply vanish. You have heard rumors of a nun who asked too many questions and was transferred to a remote monastery where no one ever hears from her again. Of another who wrote poetry in secret and was made to burn every page with her own hands. Of a third who dared to translate Greek philosophy into Latin and was whipped for presumption. And now, Now you stand on the edge of the same fate. The abbess steps forward, placing a hand on the book. This, she says, voice sharp, is not for you. She snaps the cover shut with finality. Knowledge is a burden, she continues. One that crushes the weak. One that tempts the faithful. One that leads women like you down paths of sin. She leans in. You will forget what you read. You nod, though your throat feels tight. You will confess your trespass. You bow your head, and you will never seek such things again. You whisper, I swear it. But deep inside, you know the truth. You will never forget. You cannot, because once you have seen the world beyond the veil of obedience, you can never unsee it. The punishment is swift. No stocks this time. No kneeling for hours in the chapel. Instead, you are removed from the scriptorium. For good, you are reassigned to the laundry house, where your hands will blister from boiling water and coarse brushes. You are forbidden from attending evening readings. Your name is struck from the list of those allowed near the library. Even Sister Beatrice avoids you now. She does not look at you during meals. She does not pass you bread when no one is watching. She does not whisper your name when the dormitory falls silent. And you understand. She is afraid, as you should be, because knowledge is dangerous. And in this place, danger is not tolerated. You wonder what will happen to the book. Will it be burned? Locked away behind iron bars? Or will it remain, waiting for another curious soul to find it? You hope someone does. You hope someone dares. Because despite everything, the punishment, the fear, the silence, you still believe in what you read. You believe in the power of words, in the strength of thought, in the quiet rebellion of understanding. And as you kneel for Compline that night, head bowed, lips moving in empty prayer, you make a promise, not to God, not to the church, but to yourself. One day, you will read again. One day, you will write. And one day, you will be free. You are older now. Time has moved like molasses in winter, thick, slow, clinging to your bones. Years have passed like pages torn from a book, each one blurred into the next, until you can barely remember what life was like before the convent walls closed around you like a tomb. But something is different now. Something is breaking. The world beyond these gates has changed. Kings have fallen. Wars have ended. The church itself trembles under the weight of reformations and rebellions. And with it, the old ways crumble slowly at first, then all at once. You hear whispers in the cloister. Rumors slip through cracks in the stone like sunlight through stained glass. A new decree from the crown. Monasteries being dissolved. Land seized. None sent away. Some given pensions. Others cast out with nothing but the habits on their backs. It sounds too good to be true. And yet, you feel in the air. The abbess moves differently now. Her gaze flicks toward the windows more often, as if expecting riders to appear on the horizon. The bells ring later than usual. The prayers feel heavier, more desperate, as if spoken not with faith, but fear. Because she knows. She knows this cannot last forever, and neither can her rule. Historians still argue whether the dissolution of monastic life was a mercy or a tragedy for medieval nuns. Some records suggest that many were relieved to leave, grateful for the chance to reclaim their freedom. Others tell of women who mourned the loss of their communities, who struggled to find place in a world that no longer saw them as holy, but only as relics of a fading past. For you, it is both. One morning, the letter arrives, sealed with royal insignia, delivered by a man in fine clothes who does not kneel when he enters the chapel. The abbess reads it aloud, voice tight with restrained fury. The convent is to be disbanded. All sisters will receive a small sum enough to survive, though not enough to thrive. They may return to their families, marry if they wish, or seek work elsewhere. Some may even re-enter religious life in smaller, state-approved institutions. But here, this place, the cold refectory, the endless prayers, the silent dormitory filled with whispered dreams. It is over. Some sisters weep openly. Others fall to their knees in prayer. A few simply stare, unable to comprehend what this means. You stand still, heart pounding, breath shallow, because for the first time in your life, the door is open, and no one will stop you from walking through it. They give you a bundle. Clothes not the rough wool of your habit, but softer fabric, strange and unfamiliar against your skin. A pouch of coins, meager but real. A parchment bearing your name, granting you permission to leave. You take them without speaking. You do not thank the abbess. You do not look at her at all. Instead, you walk through the cloister, past the garden where you once dreamed of escape, out the gate that once felt like a prison door. And then, you are outside, truly outside. The world smells different. Smoke and bread and horse sweat and rain-soaked earth. Voices rise and fall around you, unbound by silence. Children run through muddy streets. Dogs bark. Merchants shout. Life pulses all around you, wild and untamed. You feel like a ghost stepping into daylight. People glance at you, some curious, others indifferent. No one bows. No one crosses themselves in reverence. You are just another woman now, no holier than the rest, no more confined by vows you never chose. You wonder what comes next. There is no family waiting for you, no home to return to. The world beyond these walls is unfamiliar, its rules unknown. You have spent your entire life behind thick stone, kneeling in candlelit chapels, scrubbing floors until your hands cracked, whispering prayers that never answered you. What use is there for someone like you now? A woman without trade, without title, without identity. But then, you see her, Sister Beatrice, standing near the edge of the road, watching, waiting. She left weeks ago, part an earlier wave of disbandments. You thought you would never see her again. And yet, here she is, still wearing the veil, still holding herself with quiet defiance. She nods once, then turns, and you follow. Because for the first time in your life, you are free. And somewhere beyond this village, beyond the ruins of the life you knew, there is something waiting, something real, something yours, and you're ready to find it. The wind carries the scent of fresh bread and distant fields. You inhale deeply, savoring the air that doesn't smell of damp stone or candle wax. For so long, the only sky you saw was framed by high walls and narrow windows. Now, it stretches above you, wide, endless, painted in soft pinks and golds as the sun rises behind you. You walk, at first slowly, then faster, more confidently. The roads are unfamiliar, lined with trees whose names you don't know, leading to places you've only heard about in stories. Some villages welcome former nuns with open arms, offering shelter and food. Others turn them away, wary of women who lived apart from the world for so long. You don't know what awaits you. Work? Marriage? Solitude? But for once, the choice is yours. Not dictated by vow or punishment. Not forced upon you by parents who gave you away or abbesses who ruled your every breath. Yours. And the weight of that truth settles over you like a warm cloak. You pass through towns where people barter in crowded markets, where children chase one another through dust-covered streets. You see men laughing over ale in taverns, women weaving cloth beneath awnings, priests blessing newlyweds beneath cathedral arches. Everything feels loud, lively, free, and terrifying. You've forgotten how to speak to strangers, how to make choices without asking permission, how to live a life that isn't dictated by bells and Latin hymns. But you remember how to learn, how to adapt, how to endure, and perhaps, one day, how to thrive. Sister Beatrice walks beside you, silent for most of the journey. But sometimes, when the night falls and the stars blink overhead, she speaks. Of books she wants to read, of lands she wants to see, of a life she never got to live. And you listen. You add your own dreams to hers, of finding work in a scriptorium, of writing your own story, of learning what it means to live without fear. Not everyone leaves the convent willingly. Some sisters refuse to go, clinging to the only life they've ever known. Others try to form new communities, gathering in secret to chant the psalms they fear will be forgotten. Some vanish into obscurity, disappearing into marriages arranged for survival rather than love. But you choose something else. You choose to walk forward, to see what lies beyond the hills, to feel the grass beneath your bare feet, to sleep without hearing the toll of midnight bells. And as the days stretch into weeks, and the weeks into months, you begin to change. Your back straightens. Your voice grows steadier. Your laughter returns. Soft at first, then full-bodied, unrestrained. You're no longer a nun, no longer a prisoner of silence, no longer bound by walls that kept you safe only in theory. You are a woman, with calloused hands, with tired eyes, with a heart that beats for herself alone. And for the first time in your life, you belong to you.